When I walked out on my wife that night, I didn't plan on ever coming back. After we lost our baby, our home stopped feeling like a home. It turned into a war zone filled with quiet stares and unspoken blame. I disappeared without a word, starting fresh somewhere far away, determined never to look back. But life has a funny way of rewriting your plans. A serious accident left me battered and vulnerable, and it forced me to return to Cleveland, a city I thought I'd left behind for good. What I didn't expect was her. Hannah. She'd never stopped searching for me. And just when I thought I'd closed that chapter forever, she was suddenly standing at my front door. My name's Adam Bennett. I'm 39 now. Up until last year, I worked as a senior web designer for Thrive Internet Marketing Agency, right in the heart of Cleveland. Life was good, at least on paper. I had a wife who turned heads, Hannah, a place with a stunning view of Lake Erie, and a career I'd built with my own two hands over 16 years. I was the guy who clocked in early, stayed late, and made clients so happy they kept coming back. But all that changed when artificial intelligence showed up, doing the job faster, cheaper, and, let's be honest, sometimes better than I could. I met Hannah 8 years ago at a charity event. She was across the room, confidently talking about her latest design project to a group of fascinated listeners. I'll never forget how she looked that night, her dark hair flowing down her shoulders, that deep blue dress that matched her eyes, and a smile that hit me like a punch to the chest. "Dude, you're staring," my buddy Samuel said, nudging me with his elbow. "I'm just admiring art," I replied. I still locked on her. When I finally got the courage to go up and talk to her, something just clicked between us. Fast forward 4 years, and there we were, exchanging vows at a vineyard just outside the city, surrounded by people who believed, like we did, that we were meant to be. The early years were everything I dreamed of. We supported each other's dreams, made plans for a future that felt solid, and built a home that blended both our styles perfectly. Then, a little after our 4th anniversary, Hannah told me she was pregnant. I felt like the luckiest guy alive. But that joy shattered in a moment. I was in a meeting when the call came. Hannah had collapsed at home. By the time I got to the hospital, it was already too late. We lost the baby, and Hannah nearly lost her life. I stayed by her side for 4 straight days, watching her drift in and out of consciousness, praying to a God I wasn't even sure I believed in anymore. "Mr. Bennett," the doctor said, placing a steady hand on my shoulder, "your wife is stable, but what she went through is severe. She's going to need time, and a lot of support, to heal, both physically and emotionally." I nodded, ready to be whatever she needed me to be. What I didn't realize was that the cracks in our marriage had already started forming, and the worst was yet to come. When Hannah came back from the hospital, she wasn't the same woman. The lively, passionate designer I'd fallen in love with was gone. In her place was someone quiet, distant, like she was walking through our condo trying to remind herself it was real. I kept telling myself it was just part of the grieving process, that she needed time and space, and I had to be patient. "Want some breakfast?" I asked her one morning, about 2 weeks after she got home. I'd gotten up early to make her favorite blueberry pancakes. She looked at the plate in front of her with no expression. "I'm not hungry," she said, barely above a whisper, pushing the plate away. "You should try to eat something," I said softly, trying to be gentle. "The doctor said—" "I know what the doctor said," she snapped, surprising both of us with the sudden outburst. She rubbed her forehead and sighed. "I'm sorry. I can't deal with this right now." And that's how it started. I'd reach out, and she'd pull away. I'd bring up what happened, and she'd either change the subject or just walk out of the room. When I brought up grief counseling, her reaction was ice cold. "I don't need some stranger telling me how to feel," she said, like the idea was an insult. Nights were the hardest. She'd lie at the edge of the bed, turned away from me, silent. More than once, I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of her crying behind a closed bathroom door, the shower running to drown it out. I'd knock gently, and she'd always say the same thing, that she was fine and just needed a little space. So, I buried myself in work. I stayed at the office longer and longer, convincing myself I was giving her what she asked for. But really, I was just avoiding the silence at home. Even work, the one constant I'd always relied on, started slipping through my fingers. One afternoon, my boss Caleb walked into my office and shut the door. "We need to talk about the Ridgeview project," he said. "What about it?" I asked, glancing up from my screen. "They're not due for another 4 weeks. Caleb shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. They weren't too happy with the first round of designs. They're thinking of switching to a more automated approach. "You mean AI?" I asked, feeling my stomach sink. Yeah, they've been testing it, and they're liking what they see. It's nothing personal, Adam. It's just business. But to me, it felt deeply personal. Like the ground under my feet was crumbling. That evening, I came home earlier than usual. I brought takeout from Hannah's favorite Thai place, a little peace offering, hoping to reconnect. I found her out on the balcony, staring at the city skyline, holding a glass of wine. Thought we could eat together, I said, holding up the bag with a hopeful smile. She turned to look at me, and for a second, I thought I saw a flicker of something in her eyes, hope maybe. But it faded fast. I already ate, she said quietly. Of course you did, I mumbled, a little louder than I meant to, dropping the bag onto the counter. What's that supposed to mean? She snapped, that edge in her voice I was starting to hear too often. Nothing. It doesn't mean anything. I was just too tired to start another argument that'd lead us nowhere. But she didn't back down, stood right up and said, No, say what you're thinking. At least one of us should be honest. I didn't take the bait. I just turned around and walked away, wondering how much longer this could go on before something or someone finally snapped. As the weeks dragged on, I started to wonder if Hannah was seeing someone else. That thought stuck in my head like a splinter during all those sleepless nights. She was coming home later than usual, with vague excuses. Client meetings, tight deadlines, it became her usual script. I wanted to trust her. I really did. But doubt? That stuff spreads like poison. One night, while she was in the shower, I did something I never thought I'd do. I picked up her phone and unlocked it. My hands were shaking the whole time. I felt like a stranger breaking into my own life. I went through her messages, emails, call logs, searching for any sign she betrayed me. But there was nothing. No strange numbers, no flirty texts, no red flags. Part of me was relieved. But another part? Even more confused. If it wasn't another man, then why was she pulling so far away? Meanwhile, things at work were going downhill fast. Clients were choosing AI over real people. What happened with the Ridgeview project turned out to be just the start. We need to talk, Caleb told me during my monthly review. The look on his face said it all. The company's restructuring the design department, he said. We're cutting 35% of the team. I squared my shoulders and looked him in the eye. So, I'm part of that 35%? I asked, even though I already knew the answer. He nodded. I fought for you, he said, but the numbers don't lie. AI designs are cheaper, faster, and they're hitting the mark with clients. But they're not better, I pushed back, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. They can't feel. They can't connect with people like we can. Caleb sighed. I know that. You know that. But the board only sees the bottom line. He handed me a severance packet and a list of companies that might need freelancers. I left the office that day carrying a cardboard box filled with 8 years of my life, with no clue what came next. I drove around the city for hours, avoiding home, avoiding the moment I'd have to tell Hannah I lost the one thing I'd always been good at. When I finally walked in, she was at the dining table, surrounded by swatches and floor plans. I need to tell you something, I said, setting down the box. She looked up and sighed, her eyes going wide. What happened? She asked. I lost my job, I told her. AI finally caught up to me. I tried to laugh, but it sounded empty. For a second, I thought she might say something comforting. There was a flicker of something in her eyes. But then she looked away. What are you going to do? She asked. Not we. Just you. I noticed that right away. I don't know yet, I said. But I'll figure it out. I always do. I expected her to be angry or blame me. But she just nodded and went back to her samples, like none of it mattered. That night, I lay awake wondering how we drifted so far apart. When did we stop being a team? When did I become a stranger in my own marriage? Right then and there, I decided I wasn't giving up. I was going to fight for my job, my wife, our future. But every step forward came with another cold shoulder, another door closed in my face. And I started to wonder, was I fighting for something that was already gone? A month passed, and I still hadn't found my footing. The severance money helped cover the bills, but the freelance work Caleb mentioned was nearly impossible to land. Companies didn't want old-school designers anymore. They wanted people trained in AI platforms. So, I started learning. Spent long days at the public library since we had to cancel our internet to save money. Hannah didn't complain about the budget cuts, she barely noticed. She was deep into some big project for a tech billionaire's vacation home. Every day she left earlier, came home later. One night, we both happened to be home for dinner. I decided to bring it up. We need to talk about what happens when the severance runs out, I said. She just pushed food around her plate. What do you mean? I mean we might need to downsize, I said. This condo, maybe we should sell. She looked up fast, her voice sharp. I'm not selling our home. My career's going well. We can manage, she added. It's not just about the money, I said. It's about us, about where we're heading. We barely talk anymore. We're like roommates. I hesitated, but then added, after everything that's happened. Don't, she snapped, her hand tightening around her fork. Don't bring that up. We need to talk about it sometime, Hannah, I said softly. We lost a child. The sound of her fork hitting the plate was louder than it should have been. I lost a child, she said, her voice cold as stone. She looked at me and said, I was the one who carried our child. I was the one who had to face the pain, while you just received a call. Those words hit like a punch to the gut. I stood up, needing to put space between us before I said something I'd regret. That's not fair, I told her, my voice tight. And you know it. I'm trying to help us get through this, but you won't even let me in. Maybe I don't want your help, she snapped. Maybe I'm tired of you always trying to fix things. Like this is just some broken project with a deadline. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Then what do you want from me? I asked, frustration boiling over. Because I've tried everything, giving you space, talking, backing off. Nothing's working. I can't get through to you. She suddenly grabbed her purse and stood up. I need some air, she muttered and headed for the door. It's after 10, I called after her, following. Where are you even going? Out, was all she said before slamming the door behind her. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the leftovers of another failed dinner and another failed conversation. Something inside me finally gave way. If she wouldn't open up to me, maybe she'd talk to someone else. I made an appointment with a marriage counselor and left the details in a message on her phone. That night, lying in our too-empty bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Hannah. Can't make the appointment. Working. 5 words that summed up everything. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking thoughts I never thought I'd have to. How much more could I take? When did trying to hold on start feeling more like just trying to survive? The final straw came on a random Wednesday. I'd spent the day at a job fair, listening to tech companies describe their ideal candidates, young, flexible, and fluent in AI tools I was barely starting to understand. By the time I got home, my confidence was shot. All I wanted was a quiet night and maybe a cold beer. Instead, I walked in and found Hannah packing a suitcase. What's going on? I asked, even though I already knew. I'm going to stay at Chloe's for a few days, she said without even looking at me. Chloe, her best friend, the one who never really liked me. What? I asked, voice rising despite myself. Hannah finally looked up. Because I can't do this anymore, Adam. I can't keep pretending we're fine while we live like strangers. Something has to change. So your answer is to leave? I shot back. That's your solution? Her voice cracked. Nothing's working. Not time. Not space. Not you hovering and always trying to talk about feelings I don't want to deal with. I stepped closer. You haven't even tried, Hannah. You won't go to counseling. You won't talk to me. You've shut me out. Tears welled up in her eyes. Because you'll never understand. You can't possibly know what it felt like to lose a child that was growing inside me. I lost him too, I said, barely holding my voice together. He was my son too. It's not the same, she whispered. But her anger had softened. No, I agreed. It's not. But that doesn't mean my pain's not real. I'd been hurting too. We stood there, just staring at each other. No more walls, no more pretending. Just pain, raw and real between us. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. I need to go, she said, zipping up her suitcase. I need to figure out if this marriage is something I even want to save. If you can save, I repeated quietly. This isn't just on you, Hannah. It takes both of us. Then why do I feel like I'm the only one drowning, she asked. I watched her gather her things, feeling strangely calm. Something had shifted inside me. As she headed for the door, I made a choice I didn't even see coming. I'll be gone when you get back, I said softly. She stopped and turned. What? You need space, I said. I'm giving you all of it. When you come home, I won't be here. Adam, that's not. It's what we need, I cut her off. A clean break. No more of this slow burn. No more halfway in, halfway out. She stared at me, maybe looking for a sign that I didn't mean it. But I did. When she left, I sat alone in the quiet, empty condo, already thinking through my next move. It was time to walk away from a life that didn't feel like mine anymore. I left without a goodbye. No note, no long explanation, just our last conversation echoing in my head. Maybe that makes me a coward, But after months of going in circles, words felt useless. While Hannah was still staying at Chloe's, I packed what mattered. A few clothes, my laptop, important papers, and whatever cash I had left after the layoff. I pulled what was left in our joint account, barely enough to scrape by for a couple weeks, and dropped my keys on the kitchen counter. Walking out with everything I owned stuffed in a duffel and a backpack felt unreal, like I was watching someone else make this choice. But with each step, this strange feeling of relief crept in. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just reacting, I was doing something. I drove north with no real plan, just the idea of finding somewhere quiet to reset. Lake Erie became my guide. I followed the shoreline until city lights disappeared and I found myself on an open stretch of road near a little town called Vermilion. Saw a handwritten sign that said cabin for rent stuck to a rusty mailbox. The place wasn't much, looked like an old shed tucked into the woods, but it had power, running water, and, more importantly, no trace of Hannah. The owner, Tom, was an old-timer who didn't ask many questions. Rent's due first of the month. Cash only. Keep the place standing and we'll be fine, he said, handing me a creaky old key. That first night, I sat on the porch and watched stars appear over the lake. It was completely silent. No cars, no neighbors, no awkward silence between two people trying to pretend things were okay. I took a deep breath of the pine-filled air and felt something inside me finally let go. The next morning, I woke up clearer than I had in months. I needed money fast. So I pulled out my laptop and made profiles on every freelance design site I could find. My pitch was simple: experienced designer learning the ropes with AI tools, offering solid work at a low rate while I rebuilt my portfolio. To my surprise, gigs started showing up almost right away. Small businesses, folks who couldn't afford full-on automation but still needed help. I worked nonstop, 15 hours a day, learning new software, finishing client work, and falling into bed completely spent. But for the first time in ages, I felt useful. I didn't call Hannah. I didn't check social media to see if she was looking for me. I just vanished, like I'd shed a version of myself I couldn't carry anymore. On some nights, lying in that lumpy cabin bed, I wondered if she missed me or if she was furious at how I'd left. Other nights, I slept like a rock, free of the heaviness we used to drag around. For weeks in, I realized I hadn't even thought about Cleveland or Hannah for an entire day. That should have scared me. But instead, it felt like healing had finally begun after a year of open wounds. 3 months later, I hardly recognized myself. My beard was thick. My skin had some color from being outside. Tom started giving me odd jobs, fixing up his place, painting, clearing brush, and I liked it. The work grounded me. I got into a rhythm. Mornings were quiet, coffee on the porch with fog rising off the lake. I split the day between freelance gigs and physical labor. Evenings were for books, sketching, or just sitting under the stars. Picked up a used kayak from a local shop and started exploring the lake. Found little coves and empty beaches. That water started to feel like my life, huge, a little scary, but full of possibilities. My phone stayed off most days. I made a new email just for clients and only checked the old one now and then. Nothing from Hannah. Maybe she was giving me space. Or maybe she was just done. Either way, all I got was silence. Then came the accident. I was under Tom's deck, helping replace some old beams, when the temporary support gave out. A huge weight slammed my leg into the foundation. Tom was quick, grabbed a truck jack, and got me loose before things got worse. The local clinic did what they could, but it wasn't enough. The doc looked at the x-rays and said, "You need surgery. Tibia's busted in 3 spots. How much we talking?" I asked, knowing good and well I didn't have insurance anymore. He just gave me that look. "Best bet is Cleveland Clinic. They've got specialists." Cleveland, the very place I'd run from. But I was doped up, scared, and out of options. Tom dropped me off at the train station the next morning, my leg stiff in a temporary cast. "You sure someone's gonna meet you?" he asked, worried. I nodded, lied straight to his face. It was easier than telling the truth. There was only one person I could call, my old boss, Caleb. To his credit, when I called from the train, he didn't ask questions. "I'll be there," he said. "You can stay with us until you're back on your feet," Caleb said as the scenery changed outside the train window, from Ohio's quiet backroads to Cleveland's all-too-familiar skyline. I sat there feeling like someone caught between 2 lives. I'd left the city swearing I'd never come back. And yet, here I was again, injured, broke, and uncertain about everything. When the train pulled into Union Terminal, the sun was setting, casting long shadows over the tracks. I hobbled toward the exit on crutches, feeling like a soldier limping home from a war he didn't win. Caleb and his wife, Emily, took me in without a single question. No judgment, no awkwardness, just kindness. Their guest room became my recovery nest after the surgery. The doctors had put a titanium rod in my leg, held in place by 7 screws. They told me I'd walk again one day, but it was going to take time and a whole lot of patience. "You're welcome to stay as long as you need," Emily told me one night over dinner, a week after the operation. "We've got space." I nodded, grateful but uneasy. "I appreciate it, but I can't stay here forever. Once I'm steady on crutches, I'll find a place." Caleb glanced at her, then back at me. "Actually, there's something you should know." I stiffened. "Is it Hannah? Did something happen?" He hesitated. "She's been trying to find you. Came by the office about a month after you left. She was asking if anyone had heard from you." My mind froze. What did you tell her? The truth. That I hadn't heard anything from you, at least, not at that time. He paused. She didn't seem angry, just worried. That night, lying alone in the guest room, I couldn't stop thinking about what he said. Hannah had looked for me. After all that, she still cared? Or was she just trying to close the book? That thought clung to me all night. Then, during physical therapy the next morning, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. "Caleb told me you're back. We need to talk." "Hannah." My heart took off like a racehorse. What was I supposed to say? Sorry I disappeared? I wasn't sorry. I did what I had to do. For days passed before I finally responded. I'm at Caleb and Emily's, recovering from surgery. I broke my leg. Her reply came fast. "Can I visit you?" 4 words. That's all. But they held the weight of everything we'd been through. I stared at the screen until it went black, then typed back. Yes. The next afternoon, I heard her car in the driveway. Caleb and Emily had made themselves scarce, probably on purpose. I got myself set up in the living room, leg propped up, heart pounding like a drum. The doorbell rang. "It's open," I called, trying to sound calm. She stepped in slowly, pausing just inside the doorway. She looked thinner than I remembered, her dark hair now shorter. Her eyes held a weariness I recognized. "Adam," she said gently. That was all, just my name. "Hey, Hannah," I answered, steadying my voice. She walked in and sat across from me, eyes flicking to my leg with its bandages and metal. "What happened?" "Deck collapsed while I was working under it." She blinked. "You're a designer." "We're a designer," I corrected silently. "I've been doing whatever pays the bills," I said. She glanced around, avoiding my eyes. "I thought you were dead," she whispered. After weeks with no word, I didn't know what to think. "I wasn't planning to die," I said, trying to make it a joke, though it didn't land. I just needed space to think. "So you vanished?" Her voice cracked as it rose. "Do you have any idea what that did to me? I came home expecting a fight, not an empty apartment. Would you have let me go if I asked?" I shot back. She looked away. "That's not the point." "It is the point. Hannah, we were tearing each other apart. Every talk turned into a fight. Every silence just made it worse. So running away was your big solution," she said, eyes flaring. "Real mature, Adam." It wasn't about being mature. It was about staying sane. I shifted and winced from the pain. I was drowning in that apartment, in our marriage. I couldn't breathe. That seemed to soften something in her. She looked down at her hands. "What happened to us?" she asked quietly. "We used to be good. We lost our son," I said, the words heavy but clear. "And instead of leaning on each other, we pulled away." She swallowed. "My therapist says I was punishing you, because you weren't there when it happened." I blinked. "You're seeing a therapist?" She nodded. "Started about a month after you left." I finally told her. I grieved too, Hannah. Every single day. She didn't say anything at first, then whispered. "I know. I was so lost in my own pain, I couldn't even see yours." We just sat there, not speaking, letting the weight of it all hang in the air. After a moment, she asked softly, "So, what happens now?" I shrugged. "Honestly, I don't know. Right now I've got to focus on getting better, finding work again, trying to build a life." She looked at me, her voice quieter. "Alone?" I met her eyes. "That depends. Therapy helped you. Maybe it could help us too, if you're open to it." For a second, I saw something like hope flicker across her face. "You'd really consider counseling? After all this?" "I never stopped loving you, Hannah," I said. "I just couldn't keep loving you the way things were." She reached out, slow and unsure, and took my hand. "I never stopped either," she said, her voice trembling. "Even when I hated you for leaving." even when I thought I might never see you again. Her hand in mine felt both familiar and new, like coming home to someplace that had changed while you were gone. We weren't the same people anymore. Grief, time, distance, they'd all shaped us in different ways. Whether that would bring us closer or just prove we'd grown too far apart, I didn't know yet. One day at a time, I said. She nodded and gave my hand a squeeze. One day at a time. As we sat in that borrowed living room, something inside me shifted. It wasn't a full-on reunion, no big movie moment. But it was something, a crack in the wall where light could finally get in. A year after the accident, I stood at the lakefront in Cleveland, watching the sun rise and paint the water gold. I was back on my feet. My leg, though scarred and stiff some days, didn't limp anymore. What the surgeon called a minor miracle. But the bigger miracle? The road Hannah and I had taken together. What started as painful therapy sessions had slowly turned into talks about what could come next. We sold the condo. It held too many ghosts, and rented a small house in Lakewood. There was a backyard, and Hannah had thrown herself into the garden like it was therapy of its own. Sorry I'm late, she called out one morning, jogging up with 2 coffees. The line was insane. Worth the wait, I said, taking mine and giving her a quick kiss on the cheek. Those little moments, stuff that used to feel automatic, now felt special, like we were choosing each other all over again. We walked along the shoreline, shoulders bumping now and then, the lake stretching wide and quiet in front of us. Out of nowhere, she said, I got the promotion. Creative director, whole firm. That's amazing, I said, meaning every word. While her career had taken off, mine had taken a turn. After freelancing for a while, I teamed up with a developer to build design tools for small businesses, stuff that didn't need a tech degree to use. We called it the anti-AI approach. There'll be more travel, she warned. At least for a bit. We'll figure it out, I said. We're good at that now. She smiled and slipped her hand into mine. We've had practice. It hadn't been easy. We still had our moments, arguments, old habits trying to sneak back in, memories that hit out of nowhere. But we learned to face those things together. Not perfectly, but together. Then she said, I have something for you, and pulled a small envelope from her jacket. Inside was an ultrasound image, fuzzy, hard to read, but I knew exactly what it was. 11 weeks, she said, her smile shaky. Everything looks good. No issues so far. I pulled her into a gentle hug, careful of her belly. You ready for this? I asked into her hair. Are we? She nodded. I'm scared, she admitted, but not like before. This time we're doing it together. We stayed there like that, wrapped up in each other as joggers ran past and birds wheeled overhead. The future was still a big question mark, but now, it felt like a good one. Later, on the drive home, Hannah asked quietly, Do you ever regret leaving that night? I thought about it for a moment. I regret how much it hurt you, but I don't regret the path it took to get here. She nodded, resting her hand over her belly. From endings come beginnings. That one line said it all. The pain that nearly tore us apart. The time apart that helped us heal. And now, the new life growing between us, something neither of us saw coming in our darkest days.